So we're trying to serve everyone who is trying to understand their community. We think about like the term is like target audience, right? Who are we trying to serve? Primarily civically engaged, curious people. So parents, this is something I brag about a lot. Um, Before Abridged launched, there was one journalist in the entire Sacramento region covering education. There are 400,000 public school students in the four-county region, and there was one journalist dedicated full-time to covering education in this region. So I like to brag that when we hired Savannah Kuchar to cover education, we doubled the number of journalists covering education in this region. And we got a rock star because Savannah was covering Congress for USA Today before she joined us, and has done amazing work. Small business owners, seniors, new residents, people trying to navigate what life is like here who may not be familiar with it, and then the longtime locals. It's not a niche problem. This is something that is facing everyone, right? The lack of quality, authentic news and information. Starting with community answers. So I alluded to this. We are community focused. Brianna Taylor back there is an audience engagement reporter. At its core, Brianna's role is to make sure that the community's needs and questions are reflected in the journalism we produce. So she just wrote a story a couple of weeks ago about the old bowling alley on Freeport Boulevard in Land Park, which has been empty now for quite some time, much to the chagrin of my 10-year-old son. And we got to read a question. What's up with the bowling alley? Brianna wrote an entire story in response to that question. We're going to do more and more of that so that you see yourself, your questions, your concerns reflected in the news that we produce. So we're responding to what people actually want to know. We are not a national. We are part of, PBS is a national organization. KVIE is a local service organization. We are focused entirely on the Sacramento region. You're not going to go to our website and see a headline about a business closing, and then when you open the story, you find out that it's in North Carolina. That's not going to happen, right? We don't have the paywalls, which I know is it's funny because I could describe it as our competitive advantage is the fact that we don't have a paywall because our information is free to access. Our competitive disadvantage is that we don't have a paywall because, right, we rely, that's a revenue source. I want to make it clear that I don't criticize the business models of other news organizations. I just don't think hedge funds should be in the role in journalism. I don't disagree with subscriptions being part of your revenue model. I was at the Beat for 18 years when we really ramped up a subscriber strategy, but we did it in a way that we tried to serve the region. And I worry that some paywalled sites, the strategy is not to do the best journalism. The strategy is to do the journalism so people will pay. So the outcome is we want to get you to pay. If you want to support our journalism and become a donor to KVIE or Abridged, it's essential. It's essential to support quality local journalism. It's not our DNA. It's never been part of PBS's DNA, although another humble brag, KVIE just surpassed 70,000 members a couple of weeks ago, which is a remarkable number. 70,000 members, paid members at KVIE. So that's just, we owe this community such a debt of gratitude because that is it's a huge milestone. Why we did it now. If we had waited, it would mean losing more trusted and shared understanding of this region. And trust takes time to build. I often say trust is our most valuable commodity. We are all about earning your trust. Earning your trust. Trust is not given. Earning this community's trust every day with the journalism that we do. As I mentioned before, just the response has been, frankly, overwhelming. Our audience is growing. Right before we hit our 6-month mark, our website had reached 1 million views. So that means 1 million people had come to our site in the first 6 months, which I don't think any of us could have expected that early on. Our engagement is increasing. People are sharing it in the community. Our newsletter, and I've heard from a few of you that you get our newsletter every morning, I was talking to a friend last night who just said, I just love the newsletter because it feels like you're talking to me. You're not talking at me. And it's not just story click, story click. We're trying to make it on a personal level. And we're really proud of our newsletters. We have a Monday through Friday morning newsletter, which highlights our stories of the day. We have a Tuesday newsletter called City of Treats that's written by Benji Eagle. It's about our, frankly, amazing food and restaurant scene in the Sacramento region. Thursday, we have a newsletter called Cultural Capital that just tells you about events going on, what to do this weekend. It was something we heard. It was the first thing mentioned in every focus group we did. I just want to know how to enjoy my community. Tell me what's going on. And that's written by Chris Macias. Both of those have gotten huge growth, have seen huge growth since we launched on 916. We just 5 weeks ago launched a weekly newsletter for Yolo County. We have a journalist who serves Yolo County named Daniel Hennessy. This is a new model we've done. This is another one of the advantages of being kind of a homegrown nonprofit news service. We are partnering with Davis Media Access, which is public access in Davis and Yolo County. We're partnering with them on our Yolo County newsletter. They had done about a year of community listening, just like we did, and to get a sense of what was lacking in Yolo County from the perspective of news and information. And one thing that they found really interesting was that people in Yolo County, residents in Yolo County, what they didn't want was they didn't want some outside news source coming in and forming essentially what they called a land grab and coming in and telling Yolo County what was best for it, right? And like, oh, now we're going to write about it. It had to be homegrown. And so Davis Media Access has this incredible credibility and community connection. We have the journalism, so we've partnered now. It's just in its infant stages. We're not aware of a partnership like this anywhere else in the country, where a public media organization and a public access and media access organization have partnered like this. But we've seen it firsthand that they've done the hard work over the years, and they know everybody over there, and they're getting our journalism in front of people, and just really excited about where that takes us. Yeah, we don't base our journalism on the algorithms. It's all about serving this community. And again, when community institutions like us, like this, like Renaissance Society, like other institutions, when they thrive, it's because people introduce them to others who care. And when you're more informed, when we're more connected, a more resilient Sacramento, people understand issues earlier. And then they can participate more confidently, and they feel less alone navigating the changes. And this is a region undergoing a lot of change. Again, I've been here 20 years, and there's parts of this region that are unrecognizable to me. Not necessarily in a bad way, right? But like this, I have a friend who once described the Sacramento region of a place of promise and peril, which I thought was a really interesting way of describing Sacramento. We've got so much promise, right? We've got a lot of land, right? What are we going to do with this land? We have growth challenges. We have some school districts that are closing schools. We have some school districts where they have to build 50 schools to keep up with demand. We've got environmental challenges, water challenges, air quality challenges, affordable housing challenges, and we're still drawing. I looked at the latest census figures. One thing that stuck out: Folsom, 10 people are moving to Folsom every day. 10 a day just to Folsom. That is wild to me. We're one of the rare regions on the West Coast that is still growing at this kind of rate, particularly in those areas like Folsom and Roseville and Lincoln, and that's going to place challenges. It's going to place challenges on things like Highway 65 and Highway 50, right? And how we get around. It's going to place challenges on our education systems and our air quality. So I just feel like navigating that future as a region requires a robust, homegrown, authentic news and information source, and that's what we've sought out to do. When we lose news, we lose a shared understanding. Study after study shows that communities with a weak news and information ecosystem have lower success rates in all kinds of engagement measurements, from voter turnout to the number of people who show up at meetings, probably to organizations like this. I even saw a study that showed they looked at Seattle. There used to be two newspapers in Seattle, the Seattle Times and the Post Intelligencer. When the PI went out of business, Seattle's the bond rating for the city actually, with their borrowing power, actually went down because there were fewer journalists watching what the city was doing. Like the impacts of losing journalists are real, and they're felt by all of us. So, how can you help? You become a champion for Abridged. Share it. I always tell people, oh, you love what we're doing? Great. Tell 10 people, tell them to tell 10 people. Become ambassadors, become cheerleaders for us, if you like what we're doing, I should say. Introduce us to partners like this. I do mean this. I am so honored and thrilled to be here. I've told our team, I will talk to anyone about this. Early on, when I was starting on my own and thinking about this, somebody said, you got to become an evangelist for what you're doing. And that's how I try to approach this. Like, I believe so deeply in what we're doing that I just love being able to share it and talk to organizations like this about what we're doing. It does sound like a lot of you already signed up for our newsletter. You can sign up there. Brianna's got a clipboard here if you want to write down your email, and we'll put you into the newsletter system. I should also say our newsletters are free, right? I always say we're free. Our stories are free. We're not going to overwhelm your inbox with 30 emails a day. Our morning newsletter comes at 5:30 in the morning. Our newsletter is designed in a way where if you only have 2 minutes in the morning, you get a pretty good idea what's going on just from reading our newsletter, even if you never go to our website. We're hoping our newsletter is so approachable that you feel like, okay, I'm an informed citizen today by reading this newsletter. And this is our goal: become something Sacramento would miss. How great would that be if we were something that this region would miss if we went away? And that's our call to action to the community. If you do value us, you protect what helps them thrive, and that's what we're here to do: is to help this region thrive. That's the end of my slideshow. I was great. I was hoping I would leave a half an hour because I really want to hear your questions and your feedback. What we think we're doing well, but what we're not doing enough of. What maybe the region's news and information landscape is not doing enough of. What stories aren't being told, and how we can help. So we'd love to hear any comments or questions.
Wait. We need the microphone, so you'll take a second. Okay?
I'm just curious, what are you doing to be interesting to the, say, 20 to 35 group that are clueless about so much going on?
So that's interesting. So yes, we are obviously on social media, right? And that's where a lot of audience consumes, I should say, information, right? Maybe not news. So we're on Instagram and TikTok and the social media platforms that Joe's generate, and it's our news and information, but presented and packaged and produced in a way that audience tends to pay attention to. I will say I've seen a kind of an interesting development because it feels like kind of skepticism. I'll just say it kindly. Kind of skipped a generation. I'm Gen X. I'll just say the generation after mine sometimes doesn't display, I think, a healthy dose of like skepticism. I have a 16-year-old, and he's on his phone a lot, right? He's a 16-year-old boy. He tells me he'll see something on social media, and he'll say, "I don't know if that's true." So then he'll go and verify it with a source. And I was like, "Wow, buddy, that's really adult of you. Like that is really, In his generation, I think they're like trust but verify kind of thing. So I'm hopeful that, the 20-somethings, the early 30-somethings, I think they're reachable. I think it's something that like quote unquote mainstream media, they kind of dismiss them because they're like, we're never going to reach them. It's like, yeah, you're not, the way you're doing it now, you're not going to reach them. Right. So, again, it's one of the things where I don't think anybody's figured it out yet. But and I should say, beyond social media, we are really about getting into the community and meeting people where they are. So we've had a couple of what we call news and brews. We've been at a couple of breweries, a couple of coffee shops. We did a trivia night with a brewery in West Sacramento. We were at Old Soul Coffee in Oak Park. We were at another gathering spot on Del Paso Boulevard, meeting people where they are. It's the hard part of this, but it's like so worthwhile, because you're like, oh, well, I introduced myself to 100 people today and 20 the next day. And it starts to add up, and it's the hard work, but it's what we're completely dedicated to.
Well, I have a question and a comment. The comment was that, last week Jack Oman was here and he highly recommended Abridged to all of us who.
I assume Jack totally bombed with this audience and was like, no. Jack's a very good friend of mine, so he would laugh if I knew it was making fun of him.
Fabulous. But my question is about your education coverage, because I'm a retiree from the Sacramento City Unified School District, and the coverage in the B is not very even-handed, especially in regard to STA. So I'm wondering how the coverage in Abridged will differ from that.
No, that's great. So another brag, and I'm going to brag. I'm always going to brag about Abridged. We were the first to report in the fall the true picture of Sac City Unified's most recent fiscal challenges. And we did it because Savannah, our education reporter, she did the simple part. She showed up to a school board meeting. She goes to meetings. Showing up is literally the easiest part of being a journalist. And it's something that a lot of journalists just don't want to do. And it's literally the easiest part. And Savannah shows up. So she's there. Somebody from the district success room, like, you're going to want to look at this item right here, because it's showing that all of a sudden they've got this fiscal insolvency, is creeping its head back into it. She's built up a lot of credibility with both parents, getting a lot of, so our big focus is parents, the parent voice, the parent point of view reflected in our coverage, because it's often part of coverage of education that's ignored. The other part that's always ignored, that we're trying hard, and I can touch on this in a different way too, is like the one voice that is never reflected in coverage of education: students. Exactly, right? So we recently launched a program called Community Reporters. We just launched our first cohort. The idea behind Community Reporters was, who knows how to tell the story of their community better than the people who live, work, and play there? But it shouldn't take a graduate degree from the University of California, Berkeley to become a journalist. It just shouldn't. And so we opened up for applications, people who are passionate about storytelling. And what we're doing, we've already held 2 sessions now, training them in the basics of ethics and story gathering and interviewing. One of the members of this first cohort is a senior at El Camino High School in Sacramento, the range goes from our senior at El Camino High to a retired nurse. And I'm really excited to see about how the student does, because the big thing, I was like, you got to tell us, what is student life like? How are the decisions at school boards impacting your experience in school? So that is a big focus of it. Obviously right now with we just went through 2 teacher strikes, Twin Rivers and Natomas, almost another one in West Sac, but they were able to come to an agreement. It's fraught, and we're going to see more. We're going to see more teacher strikes, as part of a statewide thing. And those stories get really politicized, and so we just always got to focus on who does this really affect? And so, for instance, the Twin Rivers strike coverage, a story we did, an interesting different angle we took was that residents of Del Paso Heights felt like the strike and both the district and the union were using Grant High School as a prop. And they were saying, get out of our neighborhood. Like, no, this is really affecting us. Don't use our high school as a prop in your fight. And particularly a neighborhood like Del Paso Heights that has been so ignored, right? It's so under-resourced over the years. And Grant High School is this incredible source of pride to that community. And I just thought that was a really interesting angle that Savannah took on strike coverage that was beyond just the sound bites. Yes, sir.
As I understand, this is an undertaking which does not engage in advocacy and is free. And my question is, what is the financial plan to make it work?
Do you have any ideas? Do you have any ideas? I'm just kidding. So yes, I can get into this because the nonprofit news model, so there's kind of four and a fifth funding kind of model for nonprofit news. So the baseline is those monthly sustaining members, donors. That could be $5 a month. That could be $10 a month. That it provides a financial baseline, but it's also a reflection of how your community values you. If you have a lot of members, a lot of donors supporting you, it means you're doing something right. So there's that. There's major donors, KVIE and others. We were really fortunate, even before we launched, to have raised $200,000 from what we called our founding supporters. So these are very civic-minded individuals in this community who believed in our vision and helped us build that runway. We have sponsorships, so we don't call them ads because it's PBS and nonprofit, and they're not intrusive. We're not going to do pop-ups. You're not going to go on our site and all of a sudden you're like, oh, Amazon, oh, all these things, right? No, these are non-intrusive sponsorships. You may see one soon on our newsletter, at the top of the newsletter. You're not going to have to click on it. You're not going to have to scroll through it. It's just going to be there, but it's essential revenue for us, sponsorships. And then the other one is philanthropy. So you've got like traditional philanthropy, so grants, that you can apply for. And there's a fifth kind of emerging model, which is journalism focused philanthropy. Probably about 4 or 5 years ago, two national philanthropic organizations really caught steam. One's called Press Forward. The other one's called the American Journalism Project, with huge backing from places like the MacArthur Foundation and the Knight Foundation to the tune of like $500 million. And I think what's been really interesting about philanthropy in journalism is that you're starting to see this argument of like, okay, I'm really passionate about education. Well, then the first thing you should fund as a philanthropy is education. But the second thing you should fund is journalism about education so that you're aware of the challenges and the successes, So I think you'll see more and more of that. I will say, though, and I have to give them a shout out, our biggest investor is KVIE's board of directors. Our board of directors made a significant allocation to Abridged for 3 years, which built us a unheard of, one of its kind runway to be able to sustain this. And so the KVIE board of directors is really the driving force behind getting this launched. But in order to sustain us past that, we're going to have to nail these other things I'm talking about. And if you, no, just kidding. If you I did, yeah. Here. Oh, sorry, we got a mic over here. Oh, an audio there is on our stories. I'll check on the newsletter, but I can see if that's something. Will that? Yeah, that's great feedback. That's great feedback. Yeah. Okay, great. There was one here. Take it, Mike.
Without an opinion section, which I think is wonderful, you are getting opinion. When you interview a high school student, how much information do they have? And do you guys verify, or is it their opinion? And the same with unions or boards or whatever.
So you're touching on something that's really important because, we all learn, we all know about journalism. It's like objectivity, right? I got a secret for you. It's impossible, right? We all bring our own implicit biases, including journalists. The decisions we make on how we formulate a story, who we quote first, literally makes objectivity impossible, right? Yeah. So I just want to that's a dirty little secret of journalism, that it is impossible. But, right, we try our best, right? And so if in a story a high school student expresses a really strong opinion about something, we're not just going to let them say something that's completely unverified, untrusted. But if it's a story about an issue, so take I would say the only kind of breaking news story we've done so far was when students at about 8 high schools in Sacramento staged a walkout all on the same day, right, to protest immigration enforcement. And that was the only protest we've covered. And the decision we made for that protest was not because of the protest or the subject matter, but because who was doing it? High school students, right? In the middle of the day. And there were very strong opinions there. And so, you know, their voices matter. Like high school students' voices matter for sure. But we're not going to let them say whatever they want. You know, we had to do some kind of creative editing to get some words out of signs in the background. If you probably can imagine what that was. But we are still a PBS station, so we're not gonna. Yeah, it's trust but verify. And if someone has a strong opinion about something, as long as you also provide a counter, right? You're doing the best you can. Yeah.
Fight between KVIE and Cap Radio and 800.
I'm not familiar with this. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. I actually have a really easy answer for this, which is that it's way above my pay grade, and that my department of news was not involved in it at all. But I can say one thing, and I'm not ducking it. I honestly mean it. Like it's above my executive. This is true. Yeah. And we did something on our news minute when the settlement was reached, and I guess I probably assumed a question being here at Sac State that this might come up. But also, I understand if you're a supporter of Capital Public Radio or KVIE, you want to know about it, which is completely legitimate. Yeah, fair. It's solved. It's settled. The suit has been settled. All parties have signed it. No, they're not secret. They've been publicized. Yeah. So I will say that, and again, I'm not involved in obviously the negotiations or any of the legal battle or anything like that. I will just say that from my perspective, we really need Capital Public Radio to thrive, the same way we need Abridged to thrive, the same way we need the Bee to thrive. We need all of these organizations to thrive. There should be 500 more journalists in this region. And so I'm a sustaining supporter and member of Capital Public Radio and have been for over a decade. I know that doesn't quite answer your question, but it gives you where my kind of my mindset is that I think we need all of these organizations thriving. But it has been publicized that the lawsuit has been settled. It's just not. I have. And I swear I'm not ducking you. I've purposely shielded myself in the news department from being involved in all of that. Yeah, but it's a fair question. I don't know that mic's on, by the way.
It's not on.
Here we go. I got mine working. I'll come up there.
So we've been talking about how to restore neutrality in news media, and PBS, et cetera, gets labeled left bias. And so I'm wondering, how do you all monitor yourself? And would there be a way to have a right-leaning but still unbiased station?
So I'm not sure you can be lean and unbiased, but I know your point. Yeah. And I'm assuming everybody's aware that NPR and PBS lost federal funding last year. The rescission package, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, lost all of its funding. Is something that had been a threat since Newt Gingrich, but the Senate and the House, the political dynamics for the first time supported it. We lost $2.5 million. KVIE lost $2.5 million last year that we normally get from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. This will probably be so my boss and others might not want me to say something like this, but I'm going to say it anyways. I felt that PBS was collateral damage in that fight. I felt like because I don't believe that PBS is the biased news source or the biased player in this equation. I felt like the anger and the angst was directed, not fairly, but was directed at NPR. And that PBS, by association, was also punished for it. I'm not saying NPR was biased and should have lost money. No way. No way, not whatsoever. But you had a staffer at NPR, their business columnist, leave and then write a column saying that NPR is left-leaning and biased. Like, that gave them ammo. Again, back to this earlier point, like every decision you make as a journalist, I don't know that it shows bias, but in the way that you present stories, literally from who you take a photo of and who you quote first, there's a implicit kind of decision that's made there. We just feel like when we talk about opinion, it's mostly, we're not going to have political opinion in our content. It was just something that the community told us they just didn't want anymore. Others do it, and it's fine. I read a lot of the opinion pieces in the B. It was just something that this community said they didn't want out of us. So we're not doing it. And I don't think we'll ever do op-eds. We're not going to endorse political candidates. One kind of freeing thing of not being part of the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, we're not getting funding from it anymore, is like, if we wanted to, we could. We couldn't do it before because of federal funding. If we maybe wanted to, there's probably some latitude to do it now, but it's not part of our DNA. So we're not going to do it.
Ryan, nobody in this room is going to be surprised by what I'm asking about, because I'm a big sports fan. And frankly, that's one of the considerations with the B. They are no longer, other than high school sports, they are no longer reporting at the moment it happens, or the next day, other scores and stories about Giants, A's, other teams that we in this region pay attention to. So I'm not asking for you guys to do it, but I'm just thinking your model is a great one, and it would be useful to have a local sports news abridged type.
Yeah. So, and we talked a little bit about this before. Yes, as you mentioned, the B covers high school sports extremely well. There's probably, as a kind of a smaller news organization, it probably wouldn't make a lot of sense for us to try to compete with them on high school sports. We have to be really strategic about the decisions we make. The pro sports journalism, even in the last, there's two things that really trouble me about sports journalism in this country. One is that it's been super centralized, like even more than maybe news, to basically ESPN and The Athletic, which is the sports source of the New York Times. And every major story goes through them. The other thing that really upsets me about sports journalism is what's happened to Sports Illustrated, which as a kid who was getting into journalism, I was obsessed with Sports Illustrated, right? One of the best written magazines in the country. And now more than half of its website is generated by artificial intelligence. Sports Illustrated publishes straight AI. Like, how heartbreaking is that, right? In case anybody was wondering, we do not publish a single word of AI. Not one word, no AI.
Yes.
And we won't. There are ways you can use AI that can supplement journalism in terms of like research. I use it for like internal, like I got to write an MOU that used to take me 3 days to write. If I put the outline in, it says, right, oh, it's done in 5 seconds, right? Nothing generated by AI will ever go onto our website. No imagery, no stories, even our story summaries. And that's something that a lot of news organizations, the story summary, that's AI. The B's is AI. Ours are human created. So no AI. I should also mention that AI and free. In case I didn't mention that we were free, I think I did.
First, I just wanted to say your education coverage is so badly needed. I was education writer for the B when we had
3 education reporters full-time and covering those board meetings, I mean, it could be deadly, God knows, but you also picked up, information on student expulsion statistics. I remember doing a series on that, and those are relevant today. So, I mean, we could use much more than what we have, but I'm very welcome that you're very happy that you're doing that. Also on arts coverage, there's a huge dearth of arts coverage that came up at that B alumni event that we both attended. The B is not doing any arts coverage, basically. Are you planning anything in that area?
Yeah, if you guys can keep a secret. I'm just kidding. I mean, we're probably 2 to 3 weeks away from launching what we think will be the most robust online events calendar in the region, that will tell you, everything that's going on, and highly customizable. Okay, I want to go to this kind of event in this place and it has to be free, right? And I mean, literally, we're hoping it's hundreds of events as this thing builds up. You all might remember, the News and Review for years, right? And as much as I went to battle with the News and Review every day, I covered City Hall for the Bee for 10 years, and they were a great competitor. And we were both better for it. I still picked it up every Thursday because it was like, what's going on this weekend, right? And there was 10 pages of events. That's been missing in our region since the News and Review's print publication went away. So it gets back to just like helping people live their best lives. So probably within the next few weeks, we're going to debut our events calendar that'll supplement our Cultural Capital newsletter that goes out. That's also free every Thursday, because I think for me, I'm really passionate about arts and culture journalism, because first of all, I think this region has an incredible arts scene. And I mean that from performing arts to visual arts, to music. What's happened, particularly in the last 6 or 7 years, is that these arts organizations are not getting the support they need from news organizations. And they're relying on their own platforms and their own newsletters and their own social media to get their work out. And there's no one there to help them. And so the role we can play is we can provide that stage for our local arts groups to help them thrive, because we have so many incredible. I had coffee a couple weeks ago with the new creative director at Capitol Stage. And for those who've been there or have seen a performance there, she's amazing. And we're talking about ways, how can we partner, right? Like, how can we get your shows in our newsletter, and then like our newsletter into your newsletter, and really work together? How can we do an event at Cap Stage? I guess I could also give this nugget. This is a couple months away. We're gonna launch a once or twice a month kind of. Everybody know what Tiny Desk is? NPR. We're not gonna call it Tiny Desk because it's NPR. It's NPR's. But it's basically Tiny Desk. And local musicians. We're partnering with a independent arts bookstore in Midtown to host really small, intimate concerts that we'll live stream on our YouTube channel, all about local musicians. The bookstore is really cool. I probably shouldn't name them yet because we want to go public with it, but it's an independent arts bookstore in Midtown. I don't know how many of those there are. That's right. Yeah. So that's something else. I think we're aiming for our first concert to be in May. And yeah, it's all like, I think we've got our first act. I think some of the acts, the younger members of my staff who work with me, and they're like, yeah, and then this band, and this band, this band. I'm like, who? But okay, sounds great. I guess there's a band called the Bananas who's been around for like 20 years, and they're supposed to be really great. I took their word for it. So yes, we are really focused on arts and culture. So because that gets into the opinion. But there's a difference between a review and like, we're never going to do 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star. To me, it's not just about the opinion side of it. I don't want to be the local news source that goes to Cap Stage and gives a 1 star review. And now no one goes to this thing, right? Like, these performing arts groups in our community are already struggling. Now we're going to go give it a 1 star review, and now half the people who were going to go like, no, not our role, right? But we can promote it. We can like on our calendar, the who, what, when, where. I've also thought about like in our calendar, could Cap Stage or somebody send us like a 30-second video clip from a rehearsal that we put on the events listing so that people get a taste of what the show is beyond just the like, here's how to buy tickets. So I don't think we'll do traditional reviews, but do what we can to promote them.
Thank you. First, Ryan, I want to thank you because I worked with you when I was with a major state agency in the comms office, and there were reporters we could rely on and ones we couldn't, and you were right there at the top.
Okay, I was like, oh, how's this sentence going to end?
But what I wanted to ask you is, what's your relationship, Abridged's relationship with Cal Matters?
Oh, very strong. So we published a fair amount of stories with Cal Matters. Cal Matters, for those who don't know, is statewide, nonprofit news organization, focus a lot on state policy and the state capitol. Also happens to have 75 journalists. They're the largest news organization based in Sacramento. Kind of a shining star of nonprofit news in this country. For now, what we've done is we've published their content. We've got a couple of things cooking with them. Can't talk about that one yet, but something fairly significant coming up. There are some elections this year. One in particular that's a bit of a mess on the statewide level, where there's just a lot of people running for it, and we have no idea what's going to happen. So look for something on that with us in Cal Matters. But yes, we'll definitely be partnering with them more.
Well,
and I was talking about the state controller's race, right? We all know how crazy that's got. No, I'm just kidding.
thank you very, very much. Ryan.
Thank you.